everyone, it's Evelyn. We spent the last few weeks going over my favorite flowers to use in vase arrangements and bouquets. Well, now I'm going to go over the ones that I'm cutting out for next year, ones that just aren't making the list for me, ones that I simply don't like using. And the first one's a bit rough because I love it in the garden before I became a flower farmer. I mean, I thought it was just beautiful and it performed really well for me, and that is columbines. I love columbines. They're just the most beautiful flower out there. Well, one of them. But they are so hard to use in an arrangement. They're really stiff. Now, there's lots of things that I use that are stiff. But I use those for, like for the dried poppy pods, I use those for sort of an architectural detail. Other flowers that have stiff stems, there's still movement in the blossom, but the columbine is so rigid and so stiff that it has zero play in it whatsoever. And I've tried using it, believe me, I've tried it many, many times trying to figure out how to make it work because I do love it. Can't make it work. The only way it works is if you use a small bunch in a little vase on its own, which, as you can see, looks great. However, it needs to be a little bit more versatile than that for me. So columbines are no longer going to be on my list of flowers that I'm going to try and grow. If they pop up in a place where they're not in the way, I will leave them, as I do with some other things that I enjoy that I can't use, such as the globe thistle and the Japanese anemone. The odd one still pops up. If it's not in the way, I let it because I love the flower. But I won't use it for bouquets or flower arrangements anymore. The next one on my list is not one that's been in my garden for a long time. In fact, it was a new to me flower for last year. I tried it because I thought I might like it, and that's the African marigold, specifically sugar and spice, with its soft buttery yellow color. Personally, I don't like marigolds. I never grow them in my garden, even when my gardens were all for food. I never grew marigolds. I disliked that flower quite a bit. I just thought maybe with the larger head and the softer color, the African marigold would win me over, and it did not. I did use a few of them in some small vase arrangements, but frankly, after using it a few times, I just stopped using it. I had them there, and I overlooked them all the time because they just were not a flower that I reached for. There were so many other things that I preferred using. So it's silly to save space in my cut flower beds for a flower that I'm not going to use as a cut flower. So then let's move on to the third one. So the third cut flower that is no longer going to be grown for me, just isn't going to make it, is Nigella. It's another one that was new for me this past year. It's weird that I don't actually like the flower because it's the same blue as borage, which you can see if you do the comparison of the two together. Clearly the photo of the borage is far more up close than that of the Nigella. The colors are identical, but I love the borage. It adds a sparkle in bouquets. I don't like the Nigella. I think it's too soft and too delicate, and it has more frilliness to the leaves, and it doesn't give that sparkle that the borage does. So I don't get the same effect from it, even though it's the same color, as I do with the borage. And clearly I have lots of borage, so I'm going to use that and not the Nigella. I did let it stay in the garden, however, because a lot of flower farmers don't grow it for the flower, but they grow it for the seed pod. So I left it to grow to see if, in fact, I would enjoy using the seed pod, because I love using poppy pods. Well, the seed pods are gorgeous. They really are quite beautiful. And they do look good in vase arrangements. And they also look good popping out of bouquets, even if there's some poppy pods in there with them, because they're so completely different. The issue I have with them is they are kind of brittle. You have to kind of slow down to use them. I don't want them in my roadside wagon. They take too much time to work with because they're so brittle. They're annoying. They're kind of like sweet peas, but sweet peas offer something that people respond to in a magical way. They love the scent. They love the colors. It brings back memories. They love the way they dance out of the bouquets. The Nigella pods don't offer any of that. They just offer a little bit of different visual intrigue. And that's not enough. to balance out the difficulty of using them and how much they slow you down. So the nigellas are, which is also called glove and mist if you don't know what nigella is not cutting it for this upcoming growing season and won't have a space in my garden again. After nigella comes Russian sage. Now Russian sage is a perennial, and I really love the blue spikes on it. I think the blue spikes look really, really good in arrangements. You can see it here paired with a stilbe. It has kind of that same spike, but a blue color. And I do love the flower. The problem is, and tell me down below if this is the same for you, but I get a really awful smell from the Russian sage. It just smells horrible to me. I can't stand it. I cut it. I have to like toss it. I can't stand the smell. And I've asked other people, can they smell this? And nobody can smell the awful smell that I smell. So I don't know what it is about Russian sage, but it has an absolutely horrible smell to me. Much like cilantro, when I cut cilantro, it's the same thing. It has a disgusting smell to me, and I have to wash my hands if I even touch it. But the Russian sage is worse. So does that happen to any of you? Do you know anyone who has that same olfactory response to Russian sage? Because I haven't been able to find anybody else that does. But it's enough to make me, I'm going to dig the plants up. I have quite a few perennial clumps of it, and I'm going to divide them and sell them in pots as flowering perennials at my roadside flower wagon, because yeah, the smell, I can't contend with it. The next flowers that just aren't going to cut it for my upcoming cut flower season is one that I'm trying really, really hard to find a solution to, and that's the snapdragons that I've been growing. Last year was the second year I tried snapdragons, and usually 1 year is good enough. If I don't like it, I'll drop it. But I put it down to the fact that I didn't like what I grew 2 years ago. I can't remember what it was. So last year, I tried some different ones, and I tried to really pay attention to what I was buying. So what I bought was Potamic Early Sunrise, Opus Early Bronze, and the Costa Mix. And I don't like any of those. I used them. They do look okay, well, maybe good in bouquets. I don't like them, so I didn't like using them. And if I don't like using it, I don't want to use it. I mean, it takes the joy out of making a bouquet. They're there. I'm a tiny urban flower farmer. I do, at some points of the year, need to use everything I have because of how much I'm selling. So they're there. I used them. Didn't like using them. Completely unlike me, I'm going to give snapdragons a third try, but try different ones. I decided what I didn't like about the ones that I grew last year was the colors. They're just too, I'm not a real hot color person. I don't like the sunrise sunset colors. I find them too intense, and yeah, I just don't like them. So I'm going to try different snapdragons this year, and I'm going to try the ones that bloom the earliest, because of course that's when, if I don't like them, I would need them the most. So what I'm going to grow this year is New Orleans Early Lemon, which I actually did grow last year and I liked. So that's a repeat. That was one that I did like and will probably continue to grow as a snapdragon if I still don't like the next two that I ordered seeds. So the other one is the Costa Silver and Legend Light Pink. So they all bloom early, and they're all a lot softer and paler in color, which is interesting because I'm not really a soft, pale color kind of person. Can you tell by my artwork? But in the bouquets, I did not like the heaviness of the bolder, warmer colors of the snapdragons, but I really did like the soft, buttery color of the New Orleans Early Lemon. So hopefully I like them again this year, but those other ones, nope, they're not making the cut. So after snapdragons is another one that these ones aren't making the cut, but other varieties did. And that's some of the Pro-Cut sunflowers. Now, the ones that did make it, my White Light, White Night, Orange, Gold Light, and there was another one, what's it called? Doesn't really matter, Red Lemon, that was it. They all performed really, really well for me. They were very vigorous growing. They were very healthy plants. They had really long vase life, like 10 plus days. But I also grew red, which I really love in bouquets. I mean, it's beautiful. But its vase life was terrible for me. Butter chiffon, most of them didn't grow. The ones that did had terrible vase life. Same as double quick and plum. I mean, I don't know why those varieties don't like my growing style, but the other ones did. But they really didn't perform well for me. And I'm assuming the reason those particular ones don't have good vase life is because they were stressed in the garden. The less stressed the plant is, or flower, the more likely you'll get extended vase life out of them, just like my dinner plate dahlias. They're not stressed in my garden at all, and I get like 5 to 7 days vase life out of them, which is pretty unheard of. But yeah, so those particular pro-cut sunflowers aren't making the cut for me. They're an absolutely no-go. They're a waste of space for me, especially since some of them didn't grow up. And you're waiting a good 60 days to get one blossom that doesn't come up. And then that's it. You only get the one. It's a one and done. So to grow varieties that, even if you like the look of it, like the red, yeah, it's just not worth it. So after that, the same is true with some of my dahlias. Now, the dahlias, I mean, I love dahlias, and I grow a lot of them. So what I've been trying to do, so when I started growing dahlias, I started off only with dinner plates, and I purchased one of every variety that I could find because I didn't know which ones I would like. And then with each year, I edit out and increase the numbers of the ones that I haven't edited out for better efficiency for what I'm going to use and the amount that I have to use. So I did the same thing last year. I edited out some of the dahlias. Mostly last year I edited out the cactus dahlias. So I don't have them, not last year, the year before. Year before? Last year at the beginning of the year I edited out the cactus dahlias, so I didn't have them last year's growing season. That's how it works. So this year I really paid close attention to specifically the dinner plates because there are some that I definitely want to grow more of, which means to grow more of them I have to find space for them, which means potentially either eliminating others or growing less of others. Now, there wasn't any that I wanted to grow less of. However, there was definitely some that I didn't want to grow again. So for example, AC Big Johnson is one that I had 8 of them growing. They were prolific bloomers. But we, like everybody else, had a year with much more heat than we normally have. And I didn't notice this the previous years. It might have happened, I just didn't notice it. But AC Big Johnson would blow open within 1 or 2 days on the plant, let alone if you cut it to use it. So it just wasn't usable for me. So I mean, it made a beautiful little stretch of 8 plants of beautiful blooms for people driving by to see, which is good for advertising. So it kind of served a purpose. But yeah, I didn't use a single one in any arrangement as a single dahlia, as an arrangement, as a bouquet, or anything. The AC Big Johnson just wasn't used because it just was not performing well in the heat. The next one is Bodacious, which I'm going to cut out for the same reason, which is too bad because I really love Bodacious. But it was blowing open too, and you know, it would open up and be at the right stage for picking, and be blown open the next day. It wasn't usable. And that goes the same with Kenora Mac B, which is really too bad because that was one of my favorite dahlias. Now, Kenora Mac B actually performed really, really well in the late fall. It bloomed actually better in the late fall, and it was the last one to bloom. And in fact, after the killing frost, it didn't die. It kept blooming, but that doesn't matter. My flower wagon's gone. But it was blowing open. Funny, it still had good vase life when it was blown open, so I still used it. It just had a gold center in it. Most people really figured that's what it was supposed to look like because the vase life on it was still pretty good. But I'm not going to grow it anymore. I'm going to use its spaces for other dahlias. I'm going to stop growing Encore. Encore was fine in the heat, but it had really short stems, so I only used it for selling as individual single dahlias. I did not use it in bouquets. It was too short stemmed, and I felt that that wasn't versatile enough because of the amount of dahlias that I want to grow more of. And finally, Addison June, which is not a dinner plate, the others all were. Addison June is a mini ball, and I really liked it the previous year. But last year, I think probably because I grew more of the black button bachelor buttons, which offer that little spike of dark purple, the Addison June is pretty much offering the same thing, but I prefer the purple of the black button bachelor buttons to that of Addison June. And so I wasn't really using it. In fact, I only used it if I needed it. So that means not a good use of space. So Addison June is going as well. So those are the dahlias that are not going to make the list for this upcoming growing season. That leaves one more flower to talk about. Actually, I'm going to talk about two flowers, not one. So the first one is stock. Stock was new for me again last year. I do like to experiment with some flowers each year. I don't grow a big space of them. I don't find the need to grow a ton of square footage of a flower to determine whether I'm going to like it or not. I don't test flowers to learn how to grow them. If they don't like how I grow things, how I grow them, I don't want them in the garden. I'm not having a whole pile of different growing techniques in my tiny urban flower farm. They have to like my growing conditions, and enough things do. So if they don't, they're gone. So the testing is A, do they like my growing conditions? And 2, do I like them? And stock says no to both. So stock, I gave them about 12 square feet. I wanted to buy the branching variety so that I would have multiple flowers coming off of each plant. I do not do fall sowing for winter growing because of how wet we are in the winter. So everything gets started early in my seed room, and then all the cold flowers, and then gets planted out early. Like for instance, I start the sweet peas in my seed room at the beginning of February, but they're planted out before February is over. So the stock I started in my seed room, and they did fine as seedlings, and I got them out into the garden. And then the heat wave hit way sooner than it has ever hit before in our climate. And the stock only grew about 3 inches, 3, 4 at the most. Maybe a little taller, but not much. And went to bloom. All of them, every single one. Well, I can't use a 3 or 4 inch stem. I can use it in a teeny tiny vase. But to tell you the truth, I didn't like the flowers on those short little stems either. I mean, I just thought, wow, those are ugly. I don't know if it's because it was so short, but I really, really did not like them. So that was a total waste of space, total waste of time. Never, ever am I going to try stock again. I mean, realistically, out of all the ones that I said, that is the biggest yuck for me, was those stock that I tried to grow. So stock is history. Now, I said I was going to talk about another one, and that is the anemones. And I'm talking about the anemones not because they're not making my list, but because if you want to see other flowers that did not make my list, you should check out my last year's video here. The issue with it is, on that list, I have anemones. And I've completely changed my mind about that. If you watch my filler flowers, top 10 filler flowers, you'll notice that anemones is on there. So if you go and watch this video of my flowers that won't cut it for the growing season, please ignore what I say about anemones.